Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Pyware Homeschool Masterclass. Tonight we have Craig Harms. He's one of our principal clinicians. He's been with us for, since the beginning.
Before light. It was like
Before light, before dirt. He's going to be going over the traditional tools functions with us. Craig, can you give a little bit of background just with the history of the program with you and with the company?
oh well, it'd take way too much time, but I'll try to make it as brief as possible, because we've all been former band directors, so we can talk forever about that one episode. But anyway, I started back in 1984 with Pi Graphics, and at that time I was teaching full time here in Woodland Park, is where I'm living currently. And they came in and did a presentation, and that at that time it was Charting Aid, which was the first edition of this particular application. And so I've kind of grown through Charting Aid, and then we had the virtual 3D application, and then currently we're in the Pyware 3D application as it is today. And so I've gone through all of these various different levels. And the thing was, at the very, very beginning, I would not have owned a computer. In fact, at that time, I think they had talked to myself and Bob Buckner and several of us. There were like 12 of us initial disciples at the very, very beginning, that they asked us if we'd be interested in presenting Pyware to directors and so forth. And at that time, of course, none of us had any background as far as using computers. But the thing Pi realized that was really a strength, because of the fact that since we weren't really techies, but we were designers and also teachers, we understood the market, and at the same time, we could make perhaps the questions and the whole process a little bit easier to understand. And so most of the time at the very, very beginning, we spent more time not just showing the software, but just showing how people to run the computer to begin with. And so it's gone through so many different editions. And what's been amazing to me, being with the company all these years, is it's amazing how insightful the company has been over these years to know what the market needs and what they want and what works for them. Pi isn't a formal drill designer. Dustin's not a formal drill designer, but the thing is, they listen to the directors and the designers, and they feel like, well, if something that people can all use and it's going to help them, that really, really will pay off in the long run. Because again, when it comes down to it, they don't have no preconceived opinion as to what is good drill design or what is best for what they would like to see. So it's a case where it really helps them work with the market, because we as designers, we as teachers, can in fact give them the input. And that's what's so important for things like this, is that we can present what the software can do, but at the same time, it gives you as the user an opportunity to give us information as to how we can make the software better.
Great. Well, thank you, sir. Let's dive right into some traditional tools if you're ready.
You bet. Well, let me mention just a couple of things. It's really interesting is that even though the basic version of 3D can do a lot of the things that traditional designer wants to be able to do. For instance, they want to be able to do pinwheels. They want to be able to do pushes and so forth. There are times when those directors and those designers who are using or wanting to implement in their programs the traditional and also the military styles of marching. In that particular case, they're going to probably need to have in their software the plugin, the traditional plugin. And by doing so, they'll be able to do the step-offs, the drop-offs, the pinwheels, the stacks, the minstrel turns, counter marches, all of that, which is such an integral part of the traditional style of marching. So that's kind of what I'm going to do tonight, is I want to be able to kind of go through all the basic fundamentals of how to use those particular tools of the traditional tool plugin, and be able to answer questions. And we want to stop anytime and ask your question to Dustin, and he'll ask questions to me, and I'll try to clarify anything. But I want to really get through all of the various different tools, and so you understand pretty much the concept behind how to use them. So anyway, I need to be able to go ahead and share our screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click this, and hopefully everybody can see my screen. All right, just give me just 1 minute.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay, are we all good?
We can see you, sir.
All right, super. Well, the first thing I want to note, I just want you to know how I'm going to present tonight is I have designed on count 0 a one element of 24 positions standing at a 2-step interval, and I'll be able to use that one single element to show you all the basic features of the traditional tool. Hopefully that'll kind of help clarify and make it a little bit simpler to understand. The first thing that I want to show you tonight is the actual step 2 drop off and step off function of the software. Now that's this particular element right here. And I'm going to go ahead and start out by showing you the example that I'm going to actually show you how that we're actually going to execute that. So this is what we're going to do. We have a step 2, stepping out, and then coming back as a drop off actually. And that's going to be basically a 48 count transition. Let me just show you one more time. We go first of all through the step off, and we come back into the single line. So to do that, what I'm going to do is start out, first of all, as you know, we have to design that opening formation at count 0 or tab 1. I've actually put a tab at 1. And I'm going to design a particular shape of 24 positions at a 2-step interval. Now, what we're going to do is the first thing, I'm going to give you hopefully going to give you some shortcuts. They're going to make your job easier because, again, that's what the software's got to do. It's got to make your job easier, make it quicker so you can get through and be much more creative and get the work out. So the next thing I'm going to do is I want the first transition to be 24 counts long. Now I can go through all kinds of gyrations to enter a page tab or a marker on the count track, but all I'm going to have to do to make it quick is press the Alt key down on my computer keyboard and click directly beneath count 24. Now that gives me my second page tab. I want another page tab at count 48. Hold the Alt key down, click on directly beneath count 48. So we're ready to go ahead and start our transition. Now, what I want to have happen, as you noticed in that example, is I wanted to take the top half of the line and move it to the right in a 2-step sequence. And I want the bottom half of the line to move to the left in a 2-step sequential move. Now, to do that, I'm at page tab 2. I'm going to select the shape. And now I'm going to do this. I'm going to go up to my knife tool, and I'm going to cut that particular shape in half. So I go over to the right of divide into, and I find the pop-up, we have the one function called halves, and click divide into. Now, if you'll notice, it separated that particular line into 2 parts. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to select the top half. I'm going to move immediately to my traditional tool plugin, which is right here. And in 24 counts, I want that particular element to move to the right. Select my sequential push tool, and we get a control panel. Now, if you notice, the control panel has several things in it. First of all, we call the directional compass, which is what I call this right here, where if in fact we want to have a specific direction, we can do that. Now, at the same time, we have other functions. We can decide how far we want that particular shape to go, and we also at the same time have to decide whether it's going to be a step 2, or a drop off, or a step off. Now, here's what we're going to do. Yes.
We cannot see your tool panel. It is currently playing in a loop.
Oh, can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
Let me get out of this.
Maybe disable your screen share and come back real quick.
Okay.
It kept a looping animation.
Okay, how's that?
We're waiting for it to come back. Have you done your screen share again? Okay, we see tools again.
Oh, so okay. I'm sorry. Well, I apologize.
One more time.
Okay. Do you need to see the example again, you think?
The animation we saw.
Okay, well, we're good. We're good.
Look at the tool panel. Yes, sir.
Okay, all right, fine. Well, here's what we're going to do is it's going to be a 24 count transition. The top half is going to move to the right. Now, here's here's how we do this. We go ahead and select the sequential push tool. And all I need to do is I'm going to drag the top position over to the right until we get to our two-step setup. There's our first bit transition. Let's animate that. Now, one of the things that I think is really important for anybody that's writing with the software is that you don't just go ahead and write and accept it. You write, you create, and you test it. And I'm going to go ahead and test the animation. There's our step off, every 2 counts, and it stops. Looks pretty good to me. I'm going to go ahead and accept that. The next thing is to take the bottom half. Now this is going to be kind of an interesting little exercise, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to select the bottom half and I'm going to move it to the left in the same 2-step sequential move. Select the sequential push tool. Now this time I'm going to have it move to the left. I'll try another kind of approach. And I'm going to move the little compass to the left to where it points to this particular point. And I put in the stride text box 8. And it does it for me. So there's a couple of ways for us to actually create that step 2 maneuver. We can either use the mouse and move our positions to the place we want it to go, or we can actually use a directional compass. Now I'm going to go ahead and test animate that, and we're going to watch that, and we're going to kind of discuss this a little bit. Watch what happens at the very end. Notice that we have this gap right here. Now, what we'd like to have is we would like to have this guy right here, right on the 45-yard line. So now this is where we have to kind of understand how the count track works. So I'm going to go back, not accept that, and I'm going to move my yellow anchor 2 counts into the future. Now the reason I'm doing that is that I want this particular transition to hold for 2 counts before it actually executes. By doing so, we now get that last person, the last person who's supposed to not move, to stand on that 45-yard line. And so then let's see what we have, our total transition. And that looks pretty good to me. Now what I might do is I might place a sub-page tab right here below count 2. I won't necessarily print that chart. It's just a way for me when I'm writing that I don't blow through that particular 2-count pause for that bottom section of the group. I'm going to go ahead and, yes, sir.
Could we turn off the fast animation and run that animation one more time?
Sure, sure.
I think we're getting a little bit of lag, so we're missing some of the transition.
Notice also in my real view, I've also decided to go with a high step transition for the individual marchers in the real view. And also in this particular style, I'd like to have individuals face the direction of motion. And we'll kind of talk a little bit about that down the line. Does that work okay for you, Dustin?
It's a little bit better, but I'm going to turn off your camera temporarily to see if that helps.
Oh, okay.
And let's try that animating one more time.
Sure, sure. Here we go.
I think we're just having a little bit of a lag issue on internet.
Everybody's on the internet right now, you know?
That's a little bit better. So let's go ahead and move forward like this.
All right, sure. Let's go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and that looks, I think that's going to work fine. And so I'm going to stop that and accept that maneuver. Okay, now I'm ready for the next transition. Now I'm going to show you something that perhaps a lot of us who are working with the software don't really know is available to them, regardless of whether they're using the traditional tool or they're writing with a course style. Now what I'm going to do, instead of actually going through the process of recreating them moving back into the vertical line on a 45-yard line, I'm going to try this. I'm going to go ahead and go back to page 2, which means this is the transition we started with at count 0. We got to count 24. And what I'm going to do at this point is I'm going to go up here to edit, and I'm going to copy that transition. And this is a faster way of doing it rather than having to go through the process of actually executing that step 2 maneuver from page 2 to page 3, or tab 2 to page tab 3, or 24 to 48. Now all I have to do is I simply select that shape again, go back up to edit, and I'm going to actually paste the range of transition. Now, if you'll notice, when you go to that particular dialog box, you will find that you can paste an actual block of drill, have it repeat itself, or in this particular case, I want to actually go through and invert the copied range, so it ends up right back where it started. So now when we animate the whole thing, rather than me having to go through the process of creating that step 2 from tab 2 to page tab 3, moving back to the vertical line, I just copy that particular range of transition from 1 to 2 and paste it from 2 to 3. So let's watch our particular animation. Now we go forward. This is going from 0 to 24. From 24, right back where they started. And this is true for not just traditional, this is also so true for any of the course style transitions you want to actually create. Anybody have a question, Dustin?
I think we're currently doing okay.
Okay.
We're having a couple of issues, technical issues, but we're doing okay.
You know what we need to do is everybody takes a break and everybody can walk their dog again. You know, because I have been watching all of our neighbors. I mean, these poor dogs are going, oh man, we have to take a dog walk again. So anyway, all right. So let's move on. I'm going to go ahead and revert. I'm not going to save this. I'm just going to revert to save because I'm going to use that same element again.
Okay.
Okay. So our next example is, let's go over here, is what we're going to do is we'd like to take that element of 24 positions, copy it several times, and create somewhat the same transition, but with a multitude of vertical lines. So here's what we're going to do is we're going to go to the next element, which is going to be this. And so here now we have our 4 elements, our 4 vertical lines, and we want to create the same step 2, but we're going to actually end up copying our transition. So let's watch that particular transition.
Craig, we do not see the 4 lines.
Oh, you're not seeing the 4 lines?
No.
Oh. Let me try this again. I'm seeing it fine.
That's just hung on the screen there.
Are you seeing it now?
No. Maybe disable the.
I'll stop sharing. Let me bring it back up again. Okay.
Maybe try just sharing your whole screen instead of just the application. See if that helps a little bit.
Yeah, let me see what I can do. Okay. Okay, let's see if this works.
Okay.
Are you seeing it now?
Yes, sir.
All right. Okay. So now we have our 4 elements, our 4 lines. I just duplicated the single line right here, and we're going to actually go through the same step 2 maneuver. But we'll do this very rapidly, and this is what we're going to end up with when we're all said and done. I'll slow it down for you.
Perfect.
There you are.
All righty. Yeah, there we go.
So working okay for you?
Looks like it. Yes, sir.
All right, good. Okay, so that's what we want to do. Now let me go back to my original element. And here we are. So here's that single line. Now we're going to go through several things that perhaps are going to help you once again create shapes faster, at the same time create transitions quicker. What I want to do first of all is I'm going to go ahead and select this first. I'm going to go to, this is going to be a 48 count transition. Actually, it's 24. Let's make it 24. Okay, and I'm going to go through and I'm going to select this line again. But before, I'm going to copy and paste it several times. But before I do that, to make it quicker, I'm going to cut that line in half first, like we did before. Our knife tool, halves, divide into. Now it's cut in half. Now to make this really quick and easy, I'm going to reselect those two lines again, and I'm going to copy them, and then I'm going to immediately paste them as new performers. Use my same. And now I hold the Shift key down, I press the right arrow key, and I can move that line over 4 steps. So now we've created that much quicker than redrawing that line again, okay? I'll go ahead and paste that. Select these 2 lines. Now notice what happens when I selected the 2 lines to copy and paste them again. It took the first line that I cut and pasted another line also cut. So now I'm going to go ahead and copy that and paste it as new performer.
Use Control-C and Control-V.
Yes, I'm using Control-C just like any of the other applications you have on your system. Control-C, Control-V, okay? I'll go ahead and copy that. Actually, I'm going to go back here. All right, copy this and paste it as new performers. Oops, sorry, hit the wrong key. Pardon me.
There we go.
Now we have everything. And notice once again, it's cut them in half. So it's taking care of all of that issue on the front end. So now we're going to go to our count 24 to create that transition. See, they're all cut apart. Now we're ready to go. So I'm just going to select this top half of this particular element.
The third line needs to be cut. There we go.
Okay, so we're ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and select now the sequential push tool once again. And now inside this control panel, there is another function called mirror. I love this. It works so cool. It's so great. So I'm just going to select this, drag one person over to where I want them to go. And animate it. Once again, we want to test animate our work. I know it's going to be it's good. It's fast. It's slow enough. It's fast enough. Is it okay?
Looks good so far.
All right, good. All right, and I think that's going to work. Oh. Except that. So I'm going to take this bottom box down here, select this group, sequential push tool once again. And that's the thing, it's really important. I think this is during this period of time when everybody is really having a hard time figuring out what to do. This is a time to get an old drill that someone else wrote, you wrote, maybe you could just borrow a drill that somebody down the road has written and practice inputting it into the system. The thing is that what you're going to learn is a couple of things. First of all, you're going to learn that you're going to have to repeat the same procedure over and over and over again because the computer's pretty stupid. It doesn't know. It has to go through every step, and you can't leave out a step. Just like I left out the one step where I didn't cut the third line. And if you forget that step, then it gets really frustrating. And I know there are a lot of people who are using, especially those of you who are writing traditional type of drill, that you haven't used Pyware before, and it feels like at first like you're designing with a 2x4. And it's because you just need time away from having to create an original drill. And now's the time during this dead time where you can sit down and actually create, just take some old drill someone else wrote and input it. So now I'm ready to go ahead and take this bottom half, make sure I click on the mirror function and drag our element over. And there's our, now this is the same issue here that I had before. So what I would have to do to make this particular transition work properly is once again go back. I'm going to get back to where it was originally, move my yellow anchor. Let's put a page tab at 24 just so I don't want to forget that. But move my yellow anchor up 2 counts. Select the bottom half. And now the connection will be proper. So let's watch that. You know, the thing is about traditional motion, and I know years and years and years ago, I started, purchasing the various different Savant books and also the Patterns of Motion books. Both of those books, if you can find them on eBay, buy them because they're out of print, but there's such great information and audiences love seeing this kind of drill. And I think even the guys who are perhaps doing core style, they can really learn some lessons by going with some of these traditional moves. If you, like, for instance, have a 24 count transition or a 64 count transition, you don't know what to do.
Right.
This is something that's really, really kind of cool. And it's something different that perhaps your audience has been accustomed to seeing all this time. Let's go ahead. I'm going to stop that. And I think that's going to be good. Let's go ahead and accept that. And that is our next transition. Notice how the connection works properly from the the top group to the bottom group.
Yes, sir.
All right. Anybody have a question?
Anybody questions with the sequential push tool on how to create step off with that?
Okay.
I think we're good to move on.
Okay, let's move on. I'm going to go back to my file here, and I'm going to go back to revert to saved. So I'm going to go back to my single line again.
Alrighty.
Okay. And our next example I'd like to pull up is going to be a situation where we want to get into pinwheels. Now when we're dealing with pinwheels, as you know, those of you who actually have written with this particular style, pinwheels is an integral part of the Bill Moffett Patterns in Motion, where you have squads of 4 in most cases that are going to be actually in a pinwheel where there's a particular pivot point established. And what I want to do is this is the example, if you'll notice, I want that particular line that I'm going to break up into 4-man squads in a minute to pinwheel, but notice how they pinwheel. They're not going to pivot off of the first person of each squad. They're going to pivot off of a point 1 step down from that first person. So we end up with what we call the 1, 3, 5, 7 spacing situation for that particular element. So let's take a look at that. So here's what we end up getting. So let's go back and just figure out how we're going to actually create that. So we're back to our original setup. I'm going to put a page tab in and at count 8. Once again, pressing the Alt key down, clicking directly underneath count 8, places my page tab. I don't have to go to the page tab editor. I don't have to go to any other particular element of the software. This is such a quick way of moving through the count track. I write maybe differently than a lot of guys want to get all their page tabs in before they start writing drill. A lot of times I'm writing and I'm just adding page tabs as I go along. The thing that's nice about it too is that there's another way of, let's say if I want to get rid of a page tab, there used to be kind of an old-fashioned way that we used to have to go through removing a page tab. But now all I have to do to remove that page tab is double click on that page tab. And what I will get is this dialog box, which allows me to delete the page tab, or I can change the page tab to a sub page tab. Now, and I can get into all the reasons for sub page tabs and page tabs down the line, but we don't have that kind of time tonight. Maybe at the end of the session tonight, we can kind of talk about how we insert those. But there's all kinds of different ways of doing that, and it's kind of an individual situation. Okay, I'm going to go ahead, and I think we're good to go. The first thing at page 8 or account 8, page tab 2, I'm going to select the line. Once again, there's my 24 positions, and always check up here in the console, making sure that you are selecting the number of people that you want to be working with. And notice it tells me 24 positions are selected. That's really such an important thing. This console is a great, great reference tool because it not only tells us how many positions that we have selected, but also the number of positions we have in the entire group that we're working with. You know, because I remember the days when we used to write by hand, I'd invariably write the drill and find out that I'd left somebody off. And this way it constantly keeps us honest. It also tells us what the interval is. It's constantly telling us also where our cursor is on the field. So really refer to the console a lot. And a lot of times, depending on the monitor that I'm working with, I will enlarge the console or reduce the size of the console, again, depending on the size of the band and the size of the monitor. But now what we're going to do at this point, we're at count 8, page tab 2. I'm going to select that line. Once again, going back up to my knife tool, selecting the knife tool. I move into that particular control panel. Now I'm going to change this particular pop-up menu from halves to groups of 4. Don't forget, after you do that, you also have to tell the system that you want to actually divide that element into groups of 4. Now we're all set. It's done it very quickly. We don't have to go through the knife tool and count 1, 2, 3, 4, cut, and 1, 2, 3, 4, cut. We just simply do it globally. All right. So now we're ready to go through our actual pinwheel. I'm going to select now. This is one tool which is not going to be included on your traditional tool. You're going to actually use the actual rotation tool, which is right here in your tool panel. I'm going to select that. And in this case, what I'd like to do is I'd like to have each particular squad move in an opposite direction, an alternate direction from the squad below it. So now select this particular little button right here. And the other thing is what I want to do is I want to mirror the actual pivot point. So I come in, I drag this particular pivot point. Notice what happens. As soon as I click on the outside of that little plus and drag that particular pivot point to one step below the first person of the squad, it moves all the pivot points. It does it globally, which is fantastic. And that's really great. Now, for the next step is for me to decide which direction I want to actually rotate them, whether it's going to be 90 degrees or a negative 90. That has a lot to do with it. If you want it to go one direction, you put in a positive number. Like, for instance, I'll put in a rotation of 90. They go that direction. If I put in a negative 90, they'll actually reverse the direction. So now we have our 8-count transition. We haven't had to go through and move each one of those pivot points to a spot. That, I tell you, Dustin, that particular function of this particular element of the program is incredible.
The mirror
the center point movement is great. And I think we had the one issue, and I think, Dustin, maybe you can explain, where my mirror center point movement text, the checkbox, wasn't showing up. And I remember there was something I had to do in the application options. You want to explain what?
You had to increase the UI scale by 1 tick. That's something that has been corrected. It'll be pushed out in a new update, but in the version that you had.
Yeah. Okay. So that's something they may have to do if they aren't seeing that. Okay. Yeah. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and say that looks pretty good. That's our next transition. So when we animate that, that's what we get. Now we're in the 1, 3, 5 setup. Once again, notice in the visual editor, I've changed a core style glide step to a high step. So you have that option as well. Any questions on that?
Any questions on cutting into groups and rotating your pivot points at all? Creating pinwheels?
One thing I'm going to kind of show you, Dustin, while I'm thinking about it.
Yes, sir.
Sometimes I've been writing, I've cut things apart, and this is true for no matter what style you're in. Mm-hmm. And you'd like to get everything back to the same grouped order that you had maybe at the beginning of the drill. And this is a feature that I use quite a bit, especially if I'm doing a real complex drill. let me go ahead and select this element once again. Let's stop this thing. Okay. Let me go ahead and I'm going to delete this transition back. And once again, if you want to delete a transition, I simply press the delete key on the PC, and you have a delete key on your Mac. And what is the Mac delete function?
It's the delete key.
Just the delete key. Okay. Because it has changed from one Mac to another. I'm going to press the delete key and delete that transition back. And notice when I select that particular element, it's broken those squads in fours. Into four-man squads. Now, if I'm writing in a drill and I'd like to get everything back to what it was before, there's this feature. Go back up to the knife tool. Notice where my yellow anchor is. It's placed at tab 1. That's my opening formation. And now I'm at tab 2. And notice all the positions, all the squads are broken down. If I go to my knife tool, I can now go to a function called group like secondary count. Notice what happens when I click on that particular button. It puts everything back together. So that's kind of a cool way of, as you're writing the drill and you want to get everything back to all the trumpets back in the same order, that's a quick way. You can move your yellow anchor all the way back to the very beginning of the drill, select that particular trumpet section, and it will group them all back in the same order they were at the beginning. So if you've kind of gotten to the point where oh gosh, I've gone through and had to glue everything back together independently or individually, this is a quicker way of doing that. Okay? Questions?
I think we're good currently.
All right, good. I'm going to keep moving on. All right, so I'm going to go back and revert to save. So I don't want to save what we did. We have some other things we want to show. Okay. All right. The next example I want to take you into is this. Let's open up this example. The next one I want to show you is we get into the traditional floating diamond type of movement. I'm going to bring this up, and this is where we actually are going to get a chance to get into the actual traditional tool function. And so this is going to be the example. We're going to, once again, we're going to create a second line of 24 positions, okay? They're going to be on opposite sides of the 50-yard line. When we animate this, we're going to, can I get rid of the, I want to hide that, yeah, okay. I want to put a page tab, I would put a page tab right at count 78, because it's going to take 78 counts for us to execute this particular maneuver. And if I animate this, you'll see what I'm talking about. Step 2, situation where they do a step 2. When they get to a certain yard line, they do a to the rear, a quick to the rear. They move back 16 steps, and then they're going to mark time until the actual maneuver is complete. This entire maneuver, in this situation, based on the number of positions, is going to take 78 counts to execute. Now, the only thing, and I don't know, and Dustin, maybe there's something that I may need to do, but the biggest issue we have is when they meet another person coming from the other line, on the 50-yard line, you're going to probably have to put instructions saying you need to actually avoid, like shoulder to shoulder, left shoulder to or right shoulder to right shoulder, so you're not running into each other. That's the only drawback on this particular seeing the animation. I think the thing is, it's really important, regardless, is when you're writing with the software, and this is kind of a point that I make each time I do sessions with designers, is that I really try to write exactly on the system, and I want to animate on the system what I expect to see on the field. I don't want to try to write something and then because I send the drill out to somebody, then they have to say, well, he implies that this is the way it's supposed to be done. I don't want that. I want to be able to have the directors who I write for and the kids who I write for, I want them to see exactly what they're supposed to do on the field. So really work at trying to make things look exactly like they will actually be interpreted. So now let's actually go through that process. So I'm going to go back to my original vertical 24 position line. And this is the next thing I'm going to do is I want to put a page tab at count 78, because once again I said that this particular transition is going to take 78 counts in which to complete. Now, before I move into page 2 or tab 2, I'm going to copy and duplicate this particular line. Once again, Control C for copy, page 1 or count 0, and Control V for paste as new performers. Here's my symbol. I hold the Shift key down and I move everything over 16 steps. So now here's we have our 2 vertical lines.
Yes, sir.
All right. Now I'm going to go ahead and spread my anchors apart between tab 1 and tab 2, and this is where we get into the traditional tool. Now I'm going to select this particular line, and what I want this line to do is I want it to actually execute a step 2 maneuver, moving towards the opposite 45-yard line. Each person will do a to the rear or quick to the rear and move back 16 steps and end up marking time to the end of the transition on the 45-yard line. So to do this, selecting this particular line, I go to the actual traditional tool function. So I look right in here, and when you bring up that particular control panel, there's a lot of different ways we can do this. And what I did is the first thing is when you put in this route, you actually can put in the route you want them to take. If you notice, I typed in STP2. This is like a shorthand, comma, which means I want everybody to execute a step 2 maneuver. Then I want them once they get to the step 2 maneuver, once they get to what we call the action line, and I'll move this. If you notice, see how that line moves? Once they get to that line right there, they're going to do a to the rear, and they're going to march right back 16 steps. And I put a comma in there, and then I put an MT for mark time to the end. Notice when you put that in there, when I type that in there, it automatically gives you a description. Step 2, step off, to the rear, and go 16 steps, mark time to the end. What I did after I did that is I actually saved that as a path name. I called it the floating diamond. The reason being is when I actually go through the process of having the second line execute that same maneuver, I don't have to enter all that information again. So here's my floating diamond. Once again, I've taken the top guy. I want the top guy to start first, and he's going to move towards the 45-yard line. Once he hits that 45, he's going to do it to the rear, come back 16. That's all I have to do. Animate my animation, or animate that particular maneuver. Here we go, step 2. Now I've only done the first line. I haven't done the second line yet. What happens if I do fast forward, Dustin?
It starts jumping frames.
Does it?
Yeah.
All right. Well, we see the basic idea. Right. Okay, well, I think that's going to work fine. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept that maneuver. Now it's time for me to do the other side. Mm-hmm. Select this right line, move to my traditional tool plugin. It's already there. I don't have to go through and enter all of that code once again. I take the top person from that particular element, move him to the opposing 45-yard line, and animate.
This is where you want to instruct them as they cross each other.
And I would put my instructions. And I think basically most of the groups that you do traditional types of motion like this, they automatically know. I mean, that's part of their basics program. And so you probably would even understand exactly what to do. I've even had one director said, can you put it in? I actually had to go through that particular count and readjust that shape slightly, but that's a little too anal for me. Anyway, so now this is another kind of a cool thing. Let's take that same kind of maneuver before we actually enter it. Let's go and take the opposite end of this second line and have this guy go this direction. Now here's a whole nother maneuver we've created with the same outline.
Right.
So you can save that particular maneuver and you don't have to keep coming back to it. And it saves, and you can call them whatever you want to call them. you know, and it's just kind of a really, really great feature for that particular tool.
Right. Or parallelogram expand or contrast.
Yeah, it's very cool. It's a very cool thing, and audiences love it. You know, and again, you know, the thing is, I'm always impressed with the bands that are using this style of marching is that they really, really do work on their basics so diligently during the beginning of the season. So kids know how to march at 8-5 stride. They know the technique for their body and everything. And so it makes things like this very, very readable. Okay, now let's kind of, I'm going to move from that. I'm going to still stay with the traditional tool, but I'm going to move away from that. I'm going to go back and revert to save once again. Yep. And our next example is going to be right and left minstrel turns. Now, I'm not sure. Some people may call them something different. This was the term I always called them when I actually wrote them. But I'll show you what they do. And if you have your own term, you can use that. And that's the neat thing about when you're actually putting in the production sheet, or if you're typing in your instructions, you call it whatever you want to call it. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. And this is our next maneuver. Now, this is going to be, what we've done is, if you'll watch, well, I'm just going to animate it. I don't need to explain to you. You'll see what I'm talking about. Here we go. The top person turns first. We create this right angle turn, but instead of it working in a different direction like we would normally do it, this minstrel turn is such a really effective turn. Now, to do this, let's go back into our original example. So, selecting our shape again. Now, the minstrel turn is, once again, this is going to be a code we'll put in the traditional plugin, and when we'll save, because what's really cool about this is you can create this minstrel turn and duplicate it, and basically you don't have to enter all kinds of information, because it's basically setting up the minstrel turn based on the number of counts that it's actually going to execute. Now, this particular minstrel turn, what we're going to do is we're going to take this same line that we've created, there are 24, and we're going to cut it into thirds. So once again, I'm going to go back to my knife. Let me move my cursor down 16 counts, put a page tab right there. Okay, select my knife tool. Instead of groups of 4, I'm going to break it down into groups of 8. So it's broken that line up into thirds. Now, unfortunately, I can't mirror this transition. I have to do each one separately, but it's not too tough. All I have to do is select this, in this case, the top element. I'm at 16. I'm going to move back to my traditional tool plugin. And instead of using the floating diamond, I've already entered in a right minstrel turn. And the right minstrel turn is this. I want every person to do a right flank once they've hit the action line. Now, the action line, if you notice, is at a 45-degree angle. And there's a reason for that. Is what's going to happen is that the actual formation is creating a 45-degree angle as they execute it. You'll see it created that way. And so right there, I'm going to put in a right flank. And then immediately I put in forward march to the end. Now, because I have 8 people and they're doing in a step 2 maneuver, it's going to take 16 counts in which to execute that. If I only had 4 people in that element, then I would move my anchors back 8 counts, and I would still enter that same minstrel turn routing path. So let's take a look and see what we have. Looks pretty good to me. I think I'm going to accept it. So now all I have to do, I want the next group to do the same thing. I leave my anchors set at 0 and 16, select the second line, or second element, minstrel turn. Notice it comes up. I have to change it. Right minstrel turn, My action line is going to be shifted out, animate it. And if you want to do a left minstrel turn, you just put in the left flank. Looks good. Accept it. Last element. That's something maybe, Dustin, once we use, if there's a way we can have it, not have to always have to go back and actually enter that right minstrel turn. If I use the right minstrel turn, it should stay that way for the next element. Don't you agree?
Well, you would all. I can see
it's bouncing back to a floating diamond. You see each time.
It's automatically going to select the top in the list. So
does it? Yeah. So if you have 24 different maneuvers, he's always going to go to that top one of the list. Right. I got you. Okay. So I'm going to go right minstrel turn. Once again, move it out. So you can go through and enter endless maneuvers that you don't have to go through and enter all that information. Once again, that's a speedy way of actually creating that particular maneuver.
All right, and then you apply it to your multiple groups.
Yeah. Let me just try something. Let's do this. Let's take this. I'm going to select these guys. I'm going to delete them back. I'm going to put this line back together. Remember what I was talking about? I want to group it right back together, back to the 24 position element. I'm going to go to my knife tool, group like secondary count, puts it back together. Good. Now I want to break it down into squads of 4. I'm going to move my count anchor back 8 counts. Okay. I'm going to put a page tab here, select this element, put them back together like I should have in the first place. Okay. Now I'm going to break it down into groups of 4. Divide into, there's our squads. I want the same minstrel turn, but because I have it set up in 8 counts as opposed to 16 counts, that particular span of time, I put in the same instructions and I'll get the same outcome as far as that particular maneuver.
Yes, sir.
Right minstrel turn, animate. Okay. All right. Any questions?
Any questions about creating minstrel turns or the traditional tool currently?
One thing I'd like to, I'm going to mention before I get to this last little section here. If any of you have questions, like any of the things that I've done tonight, I have no problem. If you want to contact me, either you can email me either through Craig at bandfo, bandfo.com, or I don't mind you calling my office. My office phone number, just if you want to write it down someplace, is 719-687-2210. And, I have not a problem talking about anything, and I can usually get on and do a remote access with you individually. I do a lot of one-on-one workshops and seminars with directors, in addition to doing, of course, the big seminar in Cape Cod. Just so for your information, we hope to still do the seminar in Cape Cod in June. However, as you well know, things are going to probably really change when it comes to group activities, events, and so forth, concerts, sporting events. We may end up having to postpone the June workshop in Cape Cod to next year. However, any of those who are participating or wish to participate in the Cape Cod workshop, if in fact we have to postpone it to next year, I will be doing individual sessions throughout the course of the summer with each of the participants. So if you want to talk about any design concepts or have any questions, or if you want any suggestions, I'm more than happy to help you during the course of the summer. So that's something you may want to think about. Okay, well, let's get to our last little example.
We do have a question about the minstrel turn.
Yes.
How do you do it to line up on 1-3-5-7 in the minstrel turn?
If that was a situation, I'm just trying to think in terms. That's a great question. Let me see if I can set that. I'm going to delete.
Go ahead and reset that.
Yeah.
Select that and go to your preset once more. And then what you'll do is you'll move it over one additional step.
I was going to say, you need to move it like here.
Correct. So you move it to where that person is on the 7.
There we go.
Now,
yeah, there we go.
An additional step forward, and then you're lining up on 1, 3, 5, 7.
Yeah. So yeah, just move it one step further out from where you're going as far as the action line. It's important you have that action line set up for either a negative 45 or a 45. If you go with the 45, it's going to go left. If you go negative 45, it's going to go right, or vice versa, one of the directions. But that's how you're going to set that 1, 3, 5, 7 setup. Okay? Does that answer the question?
That does. Thank you, sir.
All right, cool. Yes, sir. All right, let's keep moving. The last thing I want to get to is this is more having to do with those who are doing a lot of military work. I'm going to get into the actual section of, give me just a minute here. Okay. That of countermarches.
Awesome.
Now I'm not going to go back to and create a block with our 24 position panel. I've gone ahead and cheated a little bit, and I went ahead and created 2 blocks. If you'll notice the 2 blocks that I've created, one is a 4x4 block, which is a 4-step by 4-step block. Another block band is set up at a 2x4. In other words, they're at a 2-step interval and a 4-step distance. And I want to show you how we create that particular countermarch using those particular parameters. So first of all, I'll put a page tab at count 0, and I'm going to put a page tab, in this case, at count 46. I've already done that. And so I'm going to go ahead and select my elements here, and I want to delete because I've already created it. Okay. So let's take the first group, this countermarch of this 4x4 block. So I'm going to select this particular element. I'm going to go now to our countermarch tool, which is this one right below the sequential push tool. One of the things that's really important if you're still trying to learn all the various different tools and so forth, if you move your cursor on top of a particular button and just leave it for just a minute, it's going to come up and give you a call out, which basically tells you what that particular function does. This is a countermarch tool. Now, the way this works is you got to think of that action line thing that we were talking about earlier. What I want to do is I wanted to select the countermarch. I want this first rank right here to move 8 counts towards a 45. I want everybody in the rank, once they reach that particular 45-yard line or that particular point on the street or on the field, I want them to do a left flank, take 2 steps, and then continue right back the opposite direction. So first of all, I'm going to move this guy right to this point. Notice the action line. So that's where the countermarch is going to actually start to occur, right at that spot. Then I'm going to have them go ahead and they're going to take a 2 steps and flank. So I'm going to have them move to the left. And if I've done everything correctly, if I just hit my forward button, it should do it.
Yes, sir. And what a fine countermarch that is.
Yes, it is. And if you can get into march like that, man, you're in. Okay. So I can also do it the other way. I say, okay, I don't want them to flank left. I want them to flank right. All I have to do is change the radio button from left to right. Okay. Let me just go ahead and select them again. Countermarch. I want to go right. And animate. Okay. Now let's stop right there. Let's go ahead. I'm going to accept that. That's fine. Now the other side is it's a little bit different because of the fact that if we have them flank left or flank right and take 2 steps, they're going to be moving directly on top of the person to their left or to their right. So this is going to have there's another little option that PyGraphics put in, which I really, really like when it comes to this particular configuration. If you're at a 4x2 particular block. So let's select this particular group here. And now we're going to do the same counter march. But now when I go to the counter march tool, I'll notice that in that particular dialog box, I'm going to move it out of this down here where you can see it. There's also a place where you can go right or left, but there's also a place where you take a half stride. So instead of taking 2 full steps after the flank, they're going to take a half stride. So I select that function. So now I'm going to have them all flanked to the left. I'm going to go right. I like right better. So I'm going to move it down to where they're going to actually execute the form. Here we go. Half step. Then they continue on with their full step. Okay.
Awesome.
All right.
Any questions on the counter march functionality?
Everybody's so quiet. That's where it's a lot more. It's so much easier. I'm going to tell you guys, it's so much easier when I actually can see you and see your reaction or see what you have questions about, or I can hear a groan or whatever the case is. But nevertheless, I hope that the things that I've told you so far, this is what I've told you basically. It's not your writing drill. I'm just showing you how to use the tool. And in this particular case, it is the traditional tool plugin. If you don't have the traditional tool plugin by far, and especially if you're wanting to write this kind of style, you definitely need that. And you'll need to check with PyGraphics on how to go ahead and insert that and purchase that, and also go ahead and install it on your software. Dustin, any questions anybody has about anything, regardless of whether it be traditional tool or?
We had a question that just came in. Richard is asking, can you go 1 step beyond the yard line?
1 step beyond the yard line?
Yes.
Sure. You mean this one here? Let's take this group here. Is that all right? If we take the right group? Okay, let me go ahead. So we go 1 step here.
Correct.
All right. Right there. Let's go ahead and animate.
So you take your step over, and then you take your 2 half steps.
So now they're going to be off 1 step as far as their 8 to 5.
Right. Richard, does that answer your question, sir? Anybody else have any other questions for Craig about any tools? I know we needed to circle back around to the sequential push tool, and wanted to touch base on the compass and entering the stride sizes one more time if we could.
Oh, sure. You bet. I'll go back to that. All right. So I'm back to our 24 positions. And we want to use a sequential tool. We're not going to do the copy and paste thing, right? Just one element. Is that right? Okay.
Element. Yes, sir.
Okay. So basically,
we're just going to use the keystrokes and the radial.
What I'm going to do is I'm going to, first of all, we want to go ahead and we're going to put in a page tab. We said we're going to put a page tab in. We already have one at count 0. I'm going to hold the Alt key down. I'm going to put one at 24. Now, one other thing too, especially when you're working with traditional, if you don't mind, I'm going to show you something when it comes to the page tab, to the count track, which really helps, because when you're dealing with traditional, you're going to find that you're going to have a lot of page tabs because you have so many of these sequential developments of different things, different changes of direction and so forth. And it may help you if you look right to the right of this 0 I have on the page tab or on the count track. If I click on that, I can actually zoom out to where I can, or zoom in to the count track. So it makes it a lot easier to actually be able to put another page tab in at 4 or 2 or wherever you want to put one. So now it doesn't affect the drill. It doesn't affect anything other than just being able to access that particular element of the field. So now let's go ahead. I want to make this a 24 count transition. So I'm going to select, once again, I'm going to select the line. And before, what I did is I want to have the top half of the line move this direction, the bottom half of the line taking a 2-step going this direction. So the first thing I'm going to do at count 24 and tab 2 is to cut the line in half. Once again, I'm going to come back into where it divide into, slider bar, go up to halves, click divide into. So now we've got 2 halves. Now I'm going to take that element using the sequential push tool, and I want it to move to the right. Now, let's see what happens. If I go and put in 8 to 5, now this has a lot to do with how you design the line. If I put 8, which means I want them to take an 8 to 5 stride, and I want them to move to the right. Let's see what happens. See, that's not how I want the actual transition to take place. So this is a case where I am going to have to go ahead and manually go ahead and insert or work that through. So I'm going to revert that back. And now I'm going to hold my mouse button down on the top person and move him where I want him to end up in 24 counts.
You can go ahead and once you've selected them, you should be able to type in an 8 there. Move that 2 steps to the right.
Yeah, I could. Yeah, I could. Yeah. In other words, will it actually take it from that point, Dustin?
Right. So if you'll click the.
So once I started, let's do that. Oh, there we go. Yeah, good. Good. Thank you. That helps. So now let's go ahead. Yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You're just indicating a new start person.
Yeah. Okay. I understand. So basically, by just selecting that top person and starting to move them, and then put the 8 in, we'll move them in that direction. Good to know. Good to know. That's something I've learned. Thank you.
Let me go at that point in time. If you decided you wanted to go to the opposite way, you can click on the left side of the compass.
Yeah. I can change
to the opposite
direction. Right. Well. And that's what I'm going to do in a second here. So let's go ahead and accept that. Let's take this bottom. Remember that I want the bottom half to start its maneuver 2 counts later. So everything is lined up. I have this guy who is right here is going to stay on that 45. I don't want him moving off that 45. So this is where I need to move this yellow anchor 2 counts into the future. Now I may put a page tab right there. And I may go ahead and make it a sub page tab. And the only reason I do that is so I don't blow through this. And it kind of helps me know where I'm starting that particular transition. So I'll double click right on that page tab and make it a sub page tab. Click OK. And notice it changes it from a 2 to an A. So now I still have page tab 2. And now I'm going to be able, all I have to do is click on page tab 2, and it immediately snaps yellow anchor to A to put the red anchor on count 24. Now I'm ready to go ahead and start this particular process. So I click on this person, that particular element of the line, sequential push tool. I want to move the line this way, okay? Now, as Dustin said, as soon as I start moving this guy this direction, if I put in 8 into the stride, it automatically kicks it to that particular direction. Correct. So now we have our step 2. And notice that bottom element started 2 counts later. Does that answer their question?
Yes, sir. Anybody else have any other questions or would like to recap on any specific functionality?
It's quiet.
I think we're about done for the evening.
Well, that's great. How many? I'm just curious. How many people did we have tonight?
We had 35.
Awesome. Well, guys, it's really my pleasure to have had a chance to visit with you all. I'm going to click back over here, and can I see?
Yeah, just go ahead and say yes.
Yeah. Let me go ahead. And there we go. Hey, sorry about my fuzzy image right here. This particular computer, which I love, incidentally, it's an MSI that Dustin, I think Dustin has the same one, but I hate the camera on it. It makes everybody have kind of a fuzzy, image. But anyway, I just want to tell everybody how much I've enjoyed doing this tonight. It's I hope that what I've provided you as far as the information is beneficial for not only you all who are using the traditional style of writing drill, but also those of you who are using the course style too, as far as especially some things like how to copy and paste a block of drill, how to enter your page tabs quickly, all of those things. If any of you, once again, have a question about anything that I've talked about or covered tonight, don't be afraid to give me a call or email me, and I'm more than happy, and I'll get back with you. A lot of times what I'll do is we'll do a remote access, and I can see what you're doing and help you kind of gauge you through it. And like I say, it's important that you get to a point where the program, you have to get to a point where you're kind of thinking in the language of the software. You don't want to get to a point where when you're trying to write drill, it's like the late summer and you're wanting to put out an opener or whatever the case is, you're trying to remember the procedures you have to go through. You have to get to the point where you're thinking in the language of the system. So those procedures of wanting to do something aren't difficult. You don't want to have to say, well, now how do I do that follow the leader? Or how did I do that step 2? Or how did I do that drop off? When you get to that point, then it becomes a cumbersome process. So I think it's really important during this course, this period of time, and I hope everybody's safe and everybody's healthy, but this is the period of time when you want to pull out those old drills, re-enter them, and find out what you did wrong and how you can speed up the process. I know that what we do with the Cape Cod seminar during the course of that session is we do timed exercises where we actually will have you do something and we will time you to see how long it takes you to get through a process. And if you're taking too long, then it becomes counterproductive and you find yourself saying, well, I'd like to do this, but I know it's too hard for me to put it in the system, so I don't do it. So you want to get to the point where you feel so comfortable with the system that you can just create smoothly. So anyway, without further ado, thanks, Dustin. Guys, tell everybody hello.
Yes, sir.
And we're getting ready for a big snowstorm right now, so I really get back in before I get stuck. So anyway, thanks, guys. This really was great.
Thank you, sir, and y'all have a wonderful evening and a happy Easter.
All right, you too. Thanks, guys.
Take care, guys.